Boom 1039 on air with Sir in the building. I am excited, man. I got a special guest today. But first, my co-host, Pearline B by my side. What's good?
Hey, how you doing, bro?
Oh, I'm doing good. Who is our special guest for today?
Ooh, I'm excited, bro. So today, we have an amazing man born right here in Philadelphia, PA.
Hey.
Dr. Umar Johnson.
That's right.
Also known as Dr. Umar to friends, is a doctor of clinical psychology and certified school psychologist. He uses education and knowledge in many ways for many people, for mental health of African and African American and men, women, and children. He is founder of many worldwide movements and author. Make sure you go to his website, Dr. Umar Johnson. He says, strive for perseverance, deliver excellence. Let's get to know from the mind of Dr. Umar Johnson.
Thank you, Queen. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dr. Umar Johnson,
Yes, sir.
welcome to
Thank
the
you, sir.
show.
Glad to be here.
Man, question, is this your first time on Boom?
Yes, it is.
Hey,
it
that's
is.
another
Yes,
first.
it
There we
is.
go.
Yes,
There we
it
go.
is.
There we go. Well, listen, man, thanks for taking out the time. I understand how valuable time is today.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate you sharing some of yours with
Anytime.
us. This is what I call the Love on Purpose radio show, okay?
All right.
And all we do is love on purpose.
Yes, sir.
So I have a few questions for you.
Sure.
How do you define love?
Wow. For me, love is one's commitment to an individual or an idea for which they're willing to sacrifice any and all things, including their life.
Okay. Define God for me.
God is the incomprehensible, essential origin and guiding power for all that exists.
Define happiness for me.
Happiness versus peace of mind. I'm going to define both. Because too often individuals are in search of happiness. And I guess I'm coming from my psychotherapist perspective here. But happiness is an emotion. You can never be constantly happy. If someone you love dies, you can't be happy at that moment. If you lose a job you love, you can't be happy at that moment. But you can be at peace. And I think that we have to start striving to be at peace with no matter what comes, as opposed to constantly searching for happiness, because happiness comes and goes. Happiness is based on the circumstances at the moment. So you can be happy, you can be not so happy, but you can always be at peace with what is. It's like losing someone you love. I'm not happy I lost that person, but I'm at peace that it was their time to go. So I think we should strive to be at peace with all that is, recognizing that happiness will come and go, but peace can remain.
Define an emotion. What is an emotion?
Emotion is our immediate intellectual response to circumstances that occur that may or may not be accurate. Meaning we have to be patient with circumstances, so that we do not assign them an emotion too soon, only to find out later that your interpretation was wrong. Let me give you an example. Let's say you was dating
That
a
is
female.
true.
You loved that sister. You
Yes.
loved her deeply.
Yes.
You find out she cheated, or she just wanted to end the relationship. Maybe
Right.
she did nothing poorly. She just decided the time was for her to move on. You interpreted that as a failure, as misery, as trauma. You loved her, only to find out 6 months later, the woman you really needed walked into your life. Because you prematurely judged her leaving you as negative. You didn't give yourself time to find, or give yourself time to allow God to send you the person who they moved her out of the way for. So we have to stop being so quick to judge circumstances, because it may be a blessing in disguise.
Now, are you religious?
I'm spiritual.
Okay.
And the difference between religion and spirituality, 3 main differences. Number 1, religions have all the answers. Spirituality, you see, spirituality doesn't have all the answers.
Okay.
Spirituality teaches that you have to go and find the answers yourself
And where can you find the answers?
by looking into yourself, which is another big difference. Religion teaches you to find God out. Spirituality teaches that God is closer to you and within you. So it's about going in to find the God's presence that is within you, as opposed to searching on the outside.
Listen, if you want more, hit us up on the gram. We're about to go live at On Air with Sir, at Boom Philly. This is hot, man. Thank you so much for
Yes, sir.
stopping
Yes,
by.
sir.
Yo, go to the gram right now, and we're going to keep it moving. It's Boom 1039, Philly station for hip-hop and R&B. Let's go. Boom 1039, On Air with Sir, the extended interview with Dr. Umar Johnson. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for coming by, my guy, my guy.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So this is the Love on Purpose show. And today's topic, Dr. Umar, is mental health and how important it is, right? And how thoughts become things, right?
Yes, sir.
So the rules on my interviews goes as such. One, we can't talk negative about anybody that's not in the room. And to be honest, I don't really like to talk about people in the room. I only like to talk about us and our own experiences. Two, we're not here to agree or disagree, but only to understand. How do you define mental health?
Mental health, from an African-centered perspective, because that's the narrative that I push, is one's ability to be in harmony with the universe and everyone in it. Now, if we look at mental health as defined by the American mental health establishment, it doesn't differ too much. Mental health is defined by one's ability to function within a given set of circumstances. So when you're diagnosed with mental illness, borderline, bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, personality disorder, the list goes on, it's because of your inability to function harmoniously with a given institution or set of circumstances. Now, although I don't necessarily disagree with that diagnosis, or that definition of illness, it does become a problem for us as African Americans because the system as it operates was intentionally designed for us not to be successful within it. And what happens oftentimes, so if we look at the school to prison pipeline or public school here in Philadelphia, and I'm a former Philadelphia school psychologist, by the way, okay? If the black boy isn't learning, we blame him. We don't look at the system. Now, from a Eurocentric definition, the black boy is the problem because you're supposed to function within our institutions. But from a holistic African-centered approach and from a truthful, honest approach, he's not the problem. It's the system in which he's being forced to function. So although I don't necessarily disagree with their definition, it does become problematic for us because the systems and institutions in this society were not designed, nor were they revised to guarantee that we could be successful within them. From another angle, simply put, all mentally ill people have two things in common. Number one, they don't have the ability to interpret their reality accurately. All mentally ill individuals have a problem, a fundamental crisis in being able to perceive reality. If you're an alcoholic, someone says, "Are you an alcoholic?" No, I'm not. But you're drinking 12 packs a day. But you can't perceive your reality accurately because mental illness disturbs that. So number one, it's the inability to perceive your reality accurately. And number two, okay, it is denial that you have a problem in the first place.
How do you know that your mental health is intact? And I'm talking about you. Like, how do you know where you stand with your mental health?
For me, as someone who practices traditional African spirituality, my mental health begins and ends with my relationship with supreme consciousness, i.e. God. And so for me, everything that I do, I evaluate through the lens of not only my relationship with the Creator, but the rules and regulations that have been laid out for 2 million years by African people who have developed that relationship with the Most High. So I have a set of criteria that I'm looking at that come from a spiritual realm, because from an African-centered perspective, spirituality isn't separate from anything else we do. So in America, you might have religion over here, economics over here, politics over here, business over here. In African culture, it's all one. So the priest is both the medical doctor and the psychotherapist, because for every mental health issue, there's a spiritual component to it. You are out of balance in some way with something. There could be no mental illness from an African holistic perspective unless you are out of balance with the universe.
How do you, so you know, I've watched obviously I watched all of your interviews.
Yes, sir.
And I noticed that you attach labels to yourself, you know, Black, African, like different labels or whatever. How do you feel about labels? Do you feel like labels limit the mind?
They very well can. Psycholinguistics, the study of how language limits one's ability to describe their phenomenon or describe the world. So, for example, we are prisoners to the language that we speak. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Amistad. which was not historically accurate, but there was a scene in there when the actor Djimon Hounsou, who played the role of the leader of the rebellion, Sin Q, and there was a episode there where one of the white attorneys was interviewing him inside of the prison cell, and he asked the attorney to describe a particular word, and I forget what the word was, and then Djimon Hounsou responded, Sin Q, he said, in my language, there's no such thing as maybe. But in English, there's a lot of gray. You see? So there was a conversation where he could not use that word because it conflicted with the culture that he belongs to.
You know what's interesting about that is I ended up doing a lot of like research about language.
Yes.
And I ended up realizing how the English language is a language of separation.
It is.
Right? And how, for instance, we'll say, look at that wave, right? But there's other languages where they say, look at the ocean waving.
Exactly.
You see?
It's a collective approach.
And I'm like, whoa.
And every language is a result of the collective consciousness and philosophy of the culture that birthed it. You can never separate language from the philosophy and the culture that gave birth to it. We also have to keep in mind that English is not an original language. Okay, it grows out of the Germanic script. Okay, so English is not original, which is why if you go to the dictionary and you look at the origin of words, more than half of all words in the English diction are not English. You even have African words in the English language, which is interesting. Why? Because me working in the schools, there's always this big controversy over Ebonics, African tongue, and where a lot of white educators would argue that these children are speaking broken language. And I would argue they are not. They are speaking their indigenous African language, but they're using your vocabulary. See, there's more to a language than just the vocabulary. There's the philosophy, there's the syntax, there's the rhythm. And when you look at the way we speak as African Americans, even though we're using English, and we just came back from Ghana Monday, if you were in Ghana with us, you will see that they're speaking different languages. But guess what? The philosophy is the same. The emotional impact is the same. For example, as African Americans, we tend to always speak in the present sense. I'm about to go get something to eat. I'm fixing to go get my grub on. It's always here and now. African language is always about the here and now because we are always becoming. So when you hear Europeans talk, they'll say, well, we are going to get something to eat. There is a lot of respect paid to the enunciation of words, okay? In most West African languages, from where we come from, there's not a lot of strong consonant endings on words. They're vowels. So when we talk in Africa, the words flow together as if you are rapping because we don't have to enunciate the N's and the G's and the Z's. Instead of saying, we are getting ready to have supper, we just say, we getting ready to get our eat on. And that's the way we all talk. I don't care if you're in South Africa, Liberia, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone. We all speak the same way. The only thing we use from this language is the vocabulary. And America has itself to blame for that. Because although Willie Lynch, whether he existed or not, is irrelevant, but in the philosophy of Willie Lynch, he talks about how it was important to take the language away from the African. But guess what? In the 13 colonies, they did not listen. It was illegal for you to get an education. It was illegal for you to be caught with a book. They would cut the fingers off your hands for trying to get a self-education. So they kept us, believe it or not, by not teaching us English, they protected our indigenous language. And here we are 400 years later, coming up on August the 21st, and we still speak in African.
The thoughts that you are having are being perceived through your eyes of your experience, right? And we all perceive our reality through our own experience. Who is to ever say what is right and wrong?
What you're dealing with there, and that's an excellent question, good brother. You're dealing with a fundamental difference in the way cultures interpret reality. So let's look at us as African people. In our cultures throughout the continent and throughout the world, we believe that experience is shared by all individuals within a particular village or culture. So in most African cultures, the fundamental existence of a person is not the self, it is the village. I cannot exist separate from my village. So when I speak, I don't speak for myself, I speak for the village. But when you get into European culture, that's when you get into the philosophy of an I. But in Africa, the I is the we. There is no pure I, which is why when I think of my Rastafari brothers and sisters, the Bobo Shanti Rastas, who I'm very close with because they're Pan-Africanist as well, they often refer to you as the I. They will say the I just said this or the I just said that to reinforce the notion that we are a oneness people. And we have gotten away from that over here in America, where I would argue we become more selfish, okay, than even the mainstream American culture has as African people. So when you talk about individual experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
From an African context, there is no individual experience because me and my village, because we are so much in oneness, what I see, she see, and he see, because the oneness is more important than anything else. We always talking about one God, okay? But God is one. And when we unite as one being, okay, then that is an expression of divine power.
What are your 3 steps to get into that? To coming together as one universal consciousness?
I believe fundamentally, and I think my cousin, the great Frederick Douglass, said it best when he said it is better to raise strong children than to repair broken men. One thing about the mind we got to be clear about. Once a seed is sown, you can't take it out. That's why we have to protect the minds of our children. They listen to one bad rap song. They watch one bad movie. One idea is put in there. Everything planted in soil must bring forth. That's a universal truth. And that's why we have to protect the minds of our children, because once the wrong seeds have been allowed to be planted in there, you can't take them out.
The way I feel is like this, I was growing up, people would tell me things and I would believe them, right? Especially like our parents, right?
Yes.
Our parents are gods. They're perfect, right? And everything that they do, I want to do. And I'm watching them and I'm learning everything. And basically I take these beliefs that create my behaviors into the world, right? Thinking that they're okay. Then one day realizing that, oh, my mom and dad are not perfect. They're people, right? Once the seed is there and we can't take it out, it can't be over. So how do we live our life knowing that we have these seeds that have been planted unconsciously when we didn't have that analytical mind and they just threw it in there? What do we do?
Great question. Let me allow for a cognitive psychology analogy.
Okay.
And by the way, I did my doctoral training right across the street, Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, class of 2012. Your computer has a virus in it.
Okay.
You run all the virus software you can, you get the virus out, right? Will that computer ever function exactly as it did before you rid itself of that virus? Can you ever be certainly sure that the virus or the effects of it will never rear its ugly head again? No, you can't. Most people will say we might got to get another computer to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because if you don't get rid of that virus and you put all that new data in there, it might mess up your programs and everything else. You can never be sure. That's how it is with the human mind.
Okay.
You can help remedy someone from their alcoholism, their low self-esteem, their bipolar, their borderline, their anxiety. But the chance always exists that he'll go back to the alcohol later. That's why in Alcohol Anonymous, in their program, you never drink ever again, because in their model, they teach you that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And because of that, we're going to teach you how to never go back to the bottle at all. They teach alcoholism like a disease that you don't get rid of. You can only manage it.
Okay, so hold on. So
in other words, the best protection, the best intervention is prevention. We have to stop the problems from taking place. We have to stop our kids from being sexually abused, verbally abused, physically abused. We got to stop them from being put in special ed, diagnosed with ADHD. We got to stop the Ritalin and the Adderall, because once that harm has been created, the human consciousness is so sensitive, sir. It is so sensitive that even though you can repair the problem, you can never totally restore the software.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you what I believe.
Yeah.
I believe that with the universe that I live in and my experiences with the universe, and I'm talking about man, oh man, oh man,
yes,
do I understand the universe is real, okay? I've had situations where I don't know how I'm going to eat. I don't know how I'm going to get the boom today. I don't know what I'm wearing. I don't know who I'm, and it just falls into place. Somebody will drive past. Hey, sir, I'm just driving past. Oh, take me to work. Oh, I'm not doing anything. Really? Yeah. Have some food in the car too. Really? What is this, the Truman Show? Right? So for
that's
me,
divine grace, which is different from psychological conditioning. What you're talking about is being in a state of flow where your Aishe, which is an African word for spiritual blessings and power, happens to be lining up. See, our goal in life is to become 100% in alignment with divine will. When you experience that, that's what we call flow, where at that particular time, everything in your life is functioning perfectly. You see it sometimes in the sporting world when Allen Iverson playing in the playoffs can't miss a shot. You say, where he's shooting and he's not even looking.
Right.
He's in flow, which means you are in alignment with divine world, which is an expression of perfection.
An expression
to make
of
that
God.
Your permanent reality is why we're on the planet.
Got it. Okay. Wow, that was deep. Okay. You talked about ADHD.
Yes, sir.
Being fake, I guess. Right, fraud.
A hustle.
And you said, now, tell us exactly. Now, do me a favor. Don't tell them what drug to give their child. Okay,
right.
Because I was blown away when I heard that. I was like, love on purpose, baby. But ADHD being a fraud, why is it a fraud?
Okay. ADD,
okay,
attention deficit disorder, comes to us in 1980 from the American Psychiatric Association, funded by the publicly traded Wall Street drug companies. Let's be clear. All these drugs, it's about money. These are products, commercial products that are publicly exchanged. It's money. And the American Psychiatric Association has been in debt to Wall Street for decades. They fund the mental health establishments. They control the research. That's why you never see research saying children shouldn't take Ritalin. They shouldn't take Metadate. They shouldn't take Concerta. They shouldn't take Cyclopro, because they control the research, because they fund it. Now, is that a coincidence that we get ADD in 1980? What else happened in 1980? That's the same year that the CIA dropped off crack cocaine in the black ghettos. So that means they started drugging up the children in school and the adults at the same time. Chemical warfare, no different than what the British did to the Chinese, okay? And black America is still under chemical warfare, as well as other forms of warfare like police genocide. But there's no drug that can make you pay attention. There's no drug that can make you learn about Christopher Columbus, Helen Keller, Anne Frank, and this other stuff, right? Drugs can only arrest the natural brain chemistry. They can calm you down. They can't make you concentrate. Remember that. Drugs can calm you down. They can't make you concentrate. So there wasn't enough prescriptions being written for ADD. So in 1987, they add an H to it. And ADD becomes attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So you know what that means? If your son has inattention problems, he's not hyper. He just don't pay attention. According to the new criteria of the DSM, he can still be diagnosed with ADHD, and he's not even hyper. He'll be taking drugs for a problem he don't even have, because it's all about the money. And not only that, parents need to also know, even if your child doesn't even meet the criteria for ADHD as laid out, they can still be diagnosed with it, because there's a category known as specified or unspecified ADHD. This means they don't even meet all the criteria, but we feel strongly that they need the crack for kids.
Now, you said don't give your kids drugs. The only drug to give your kid is
love.
Love.
If they had love, they wouldn't need drugs. 85% of black boys diagnosed with ADHD are fatherless. Daddy's in jail for doing what? Probably selling the same crack they're giving to a son. Isn't that ironic? That you got black men filling up the prisons on State Road right here in Philadelphia for selling or possessing crack, but yet you'll give a derivative of that crack, methylphenidate, okay, and you'll give it to a son so he can sit still long enough to learn about Christopher Columbus. Isn't that insane?
I got a question.
Yes.
Do you believe in evil?
Absolutely, I do.
What is evil? Define it for you. What do you think evil is?
Evil is the absence of one's understanding, and overstanding that the entire universe functions under righteousness and divine design. And no matter how much you try to work against that divine design, you will ultimately lose. Evil, anyone who practices evil at the end of the day doesn't understand the power of the Most High.
Just like the darkness, right? Darkness doesn't exist. It's not until you turn off the light that darkness comes, right?
So I would argue that darkness gives birth to the light. They are not opposites. They are two parts of the same. When that woman carries that baby, when our queens carry that baby is carried in darkness. In fact, the sac of the woman is covered in melanin, the chemical that gives us our color, you see, which is more than just color. This is an energy, by the way, okay? When she gives birth to that baby, she opens her legs, and then the light shines out and the life comes. So it's not light versus dark. It is the darkness that births the light. Are y'all seeing this? Are y'all seeing this?
Wow, amazing. Is money the root of all evil?
As the Bible says, it's the love of money that is the root of all evil. I'm going to go a step further. From a political perspective, it is not having enough money that is the root of all evil. When you look at poverty, okay?
Yes.
I grew up North Philadelphia, okay?
Yes.
Susquehanna Avenue, right? Not having money is the root of evil, because when people don't have, they get desperate.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? They start making sacrifices. They
go
start
into survival
taking
mode.
They go into survival mode. That's the evil.
So I have a question for you, because I am trying to get all the wisdom I can.
Yes, sir.
My understanding, there are 3 brain waves, and as all waves, just like the radio waves, they carry information.
Yes.
Okay. These brain waves carry thoughts. The highest brain wave is God-like thoughts.
Yes.
Okay. And the lowest brain wave is the unconscious mind. It is survival mode. And from
Total selfishness.
Right. And from my understanding, it is our environment that we're placed in that is causing us to go into survival mode and not be able to move up in brain waves.
Absolutely.
This is why we meditate, right? To move our brain waves up. Now, I seen you, I don't know if you were meditating before we started.
Yes,
you
I
were
was.
praying. Okay.
Clearing out the mind and asking my Ori to make sure that my responses to your questions are in divine alignment. So in the spiritual system that I practice is known as Ifa. It's from the Yoruba of Nigeria. We all know that we have God in us. We have that soul. Well, in Yoruba culture, it's called the Ori, and your head is the shrine for the God that lives in you, the Ori, that aspect of supreme consciousness that dwells within us. And so we propitiate the Ori, and we ask the Ori, that aspect of the one God, to help us stay in alignment intellectually, because the Ori is responsible for the decisions we make, the thoughts that we think. Okay, and the Ori also communicates with all other spirits on our behalf. So if your Ori is not in alignment with the Most High, then nor can your communications be with any other spiritual source. So I was asking my Ori to align me for the purpose of this interview.
How do you strengthen your will, your free will? And define free will.
Okay. It's interesting you say that, because my archetype is Ogun. Ogun is the aspect of God that deals with strength, discipline, tenacity, hard work. He is the willpower, right?
Okay.
This is the personification of an aspect of divine consciousness.
Okay.
In other words, in our humility as African people, we understand we can never totally comprehend God, so we approach God through understanding the different functions of supreme consciousness. So just like you have sir, the brother, the son, the cousin, the philosopher, the disc jockey, these are all different functions of you, but there's still only one sir.
Right.
So when I speak of Ogun, I'm speaking about that aspect of God that deals with will. I'm born under that archetype. We're all born under one. Willpower is important, right? But it should only be exercised once you are certain that your agenda is in alignment with divine will. So the word Ifa means destiny. We are all born with a destiny. We actually choose it before we incarnate to earth. So all of us have been here before. You're coming back to finish your job. You didn't finish. Otherwise, you wouldn't be back. So we've incarnated to finish that agenda that was originally assigned to us. We have to make sure you're always walking your divine destiny. You can't walk mine. I can't walk yours. It must be yours. And I would argue that from a mental illness perspective that we started discussing, a lot of us are unhappy because the walk we're walking ain't the one we chose. That's not the agreement we made with God. You didn't agree with God to come here and be a doctor. You agreed with God to come here and be a savior. You didn't agree with God to come here and be a rapper. You agreed with God to come here and be a medical doctor. You see, so a lot of times when people say, I still feel unfulfilled, I'm still not happy, I got all the money, I got a wife, I got a beautiful family, why am I not happy with myself? Because you're not walking the destiny you chose in heaven before you got here. So being in alignment with divine will is key, because guess what? No will is greater than the divine. So even if you are totally committed to building the greatest entertainment company in the world, if that is not the contract you signed with the Lord before you came to this earth plane again, it will fail. And even if it succeeds, you'll never be happy, because that's not why you're here. You must walk your path, and you must find out what your destiny is. Knowing your destiny is critical. And that's why in our tradition, we get spiritual readings from time to time to help us know if we're on the right path or not.
How do you describe your existence? Meaning like what are you?
We exist on two levels. We exist in heaven and we exist on earth.
What is heaven and what is earth? Because
heaven is a realm of existence where all spirits who have walked this earth and have conducted themselves a certain way are. Now, there's other realms for those who did not conduct themselves a certain way. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, it's called hell. Okay, African traditions, we may give it other names. Okay, but there's a place where spirits go. And again, we are all reincarnated beings. So when you reincarnate, your soul remains in heaven, but sends an aspect of it with you down to earth. So I have a double up there. You have a double up there. And in African tradition, we're often asked to communicate with that double. There's offerings that we give to that double. It's almost like, you know, you're going to astral project yourself onto the earth plane. You understand? And we establish a communication with that aspect of ourself that is in heaven so they can help align us to our perfect destiny.
Is it written or are you writing it?
It's both. In African culture, we say we're not creators, we're co-creators. When you talk about fate versus destiny, it's a balance. Your destiny is written before you got here. However, you can change it by your conduct and decisions. I could have been destined to be the greatest black leader in world history, but because of poor decisions, poor character, mistakes that I made, I can cut that short. Which is why in our culture, making decisions is critical, because every decision creates a set of circumstances that dictate that more decisions need to be made. So again, it's about staying on that path. For example, somebody calls you tonight, there's a party going on. You're like, I don't know if I want to go. They be kind of shady over there. You decide to go, you lose your life. Your destiny was to do something great on earth, but you made the decision to go to a party where you lost your life, where you could have easily decided not to go. So does everyone die when they're supposed to? Not necessarily. In fact, when people die prematurely, there's certain rituals that we do because your soul was not supposed to go back yet. You were supposed to be here a little longer, but because of poor decisions, you lost your life earlier. We co-create with the Creator.
For me, thoughts become feelings and feelings become actions, right? So if you think your spouse is cheating on you, then you'll feel like, you know, for instance, like you'll get hot inside and then you'll pick up the phone and that's an action, right? So thoughts become feelings, feelings become actions, actions can become behaviors, behaviors become habits, habits become your personality.
And that becomes your destiny.
And that becomes your personal reality. That's how you interact with your personal reality, right? For me, I understand that you can add an emotion to a thought to bring it to manifestation, right? So at the end of the day, I don't know what to believe, right? I heard about all the religions, right? I grew up Christian and I grew up Catholic. My mom was Catholic, hardcore.
Yes, sir.
Right? Get the rosary, do your Hail Marys.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And my dad was Muslim and my mom was Christian.
Great. So look, I go home. No. This is how we do it, right? So I'm like, wow, at a young age, I realized that I had a choice in religion, right? And I said, oh, wow, I never knew that you could choose religion. How do you make a good decision? How do you know? Because at the end of the day, you do have to choose something. You have all the choices in the world and everything exists at the same time, right? So how do you know when you're making a good decision?
It's tough, but I would say some aspects of making a good decision, number one, include knowing all your options, not being emotional with it. A lot of times our emotional commitment to a certain path is what keeps us from making a chosen decision. For example, you're about to get married. You find out she ain't the right one for whatever reason, but you done spent all this money on the wedding. You didn't already pay for the honeymoon. You got all the top names of the industry coming to this wedding. You know that she's no longer the one for you. You know it in your gut. But guess what? You're going to go ahead and get married anyway because of how other people perceive you. Your emotional commitment to the situation you created around her becoming your wife forces you to go forward. I know a lot of people who've done this. I've had people call me up the day before their wedding. Dr. Umar, I need to get your advice on something. I'm about to marry this sister. I'm about to marry this man. I just found out, boom, 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 boom. You know, he's a porn star. She's a this. I mean, these are real stories I've had. If he's doing it now, he's going to do it after you get married. Marriage is not a cure for promiscuity. And if you're getting married to cure promiscuity, you're going to be very disappointed. End it now. You already know in your heart that you don't need to go forward, but you're more concerned about how people look at you than you're concerned about your happiness and peace of mind. And too often our decisions are mired by our ego. Because see, the problem we got a soul and then we got an ego. The soul is of heaven. The ego is of earth. The soul is about doing what is best. The ego is about doing what looks the best. And the question becomes, what is running your life? Is it your ego or is it your soul? And that's the good and bad, the devil and the God that is at war with us constantly. Okay, because sometimes you say, I know I don't need to check this brother. What he said to me was disrespectful, but I need to let it go. I need to be humble. And when you humble yourself, you basically tell the ego to go have a timeout. You see? But your ego says, nah, he disrespected you. You got to check him. So you end up checking him and you end up getting shot and you end up being in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. We got to decide what's going to run our life. The soul, which is God, or the devil, which is the ego. Two masters cannot run the same household.
You said if you control a person's thinking, you control their actions.
Yes, and that comes from Dr. Carter G. Woodson, father of Black History Month, miseducation of the Negro. If you control their thinking, you control their actions. Right. And if you control his thinking, you don't have to tell him to go to the back door. He'll go on his own. Right. And if there's no back door for him to go to, he'll make one. That's how powerful it is to control what people think, which is why for me, what's happening to our sons in the school district of Philadelphia and all across this country, to me, it is a crime against humanity because they are deliberately destroying the intellectual potential of Black children. Dr. Carter G. Woodson said there would be no lynchings if they did not begin in the schoolhouse. Mine is the master power, which is why I say if a brother is ever arrested for committing a crime, his classroom teacher and his school principal should also be held accountable. They should be accomplices right there in front of the judge because had you done your job, he may not be here. The mother of crime is miseducation. And the father of crime is economic castration. You miseducate a Black boy and then you prevent him from earning a decent livable wage job, you just made a criminal. Criminals are not born. Criminals are made by the society where they exist.
How do you control your thinking?
To control thinking takes meditation, intense prayer, intense spiritual philosophical thought. It takes fasting. And it takes wisdom. And you got to pray for the wisdom because you can have all the knowledge and none of the wisdom. Wisdom must gracefully come from the Most High. You have to pray for that. Because once you have wisdom, you know exactly what to do and when to do it. Once you have wisdom, you know the exact decision to make and when to make it. Wisdom is when the consciousness of the Supreme descends on your own mind and guides your thought and behavior. You have to be at peace once wisdom comes upon you. Some of us get it in our 60s. Some of us get it in our 70s, our 80s. But we have to get to the point where we can get wisdom in our youth because that's when we need it. Because it is the youth that lead and it is the youth that build. Imagine if you and I had the divine consciousness of knowing the right thing to do at every moment of our existence. We will be unstoppable. As the Bible says, and know that ye are gods. All of us are a manifestation of supreme consciousness on the earthly realm, and we have to start projecting that and understanding that. And that's one of the things that I want to teach at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. I want them to understand that you are God walking the earth in flesh, not to be arrogant. Because sometimes we'll get arrogant with it. I'm God. No. You didn't create that sun. You didn't create that moon. You didn't create that water. When I say you are gods, I'm saying you are a living manifestation of the one supreme essence from which we all come. I want to teach that.
What's the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Knowledge is purely information. Wisdom is the ability to put that information into action so that it serves the greater good of humanity.
Got it.
There is no wisdom that does not begin and end with the best interests of the people. Whenever you get greed, wisdom's out the door.
Let me ask you a question. Being able to have, do, or be anything in the world that you want to be without displacing someone else or oppressing someone, I guess, in a sense, would that be knowledge or would that be wisdom?
I think that it sounds like it's basically an opportunity. Okay, it's an opportunity for you. Whether it will be grace or wisdom depends on what you do with it. What decisions do you make? You understand? What did you choose to do with that freedom and power that you were given? I would have to see the outcome to determine if it was grace and wisdom. And grace and wisdom are like brother and sisters. You really can't have one without the other because if you're wise, you have grace. And if you're grace, you have wisdom.
Do you think you're misunderstood?
All the time, and absolutely. And a lot of it is due to the fact that it's the sound bites. You know, you do an interview and they'll take a sound bite and not put it in context of what I said. And so that gets misrepresented. And of course, we live in a world where sensationalism is more important than the truth. So people often take what I say out of context. Just to give you an example, okay, I believe that African people need to marry within our culture. I do not support interracial relationships. Do I hate white people? I do not. Do I hate black people who date and marry white people? I do not. But the reason I am of that opinion is because only 1 out of every 4 black women gets married. And if all of our educated black men keep on going outside of the community, then our sisters won't have husbands. My conclusion has nothing to do with hating white people. It's about loving black women. If our boys don't see black men loving on black women, they won't do it themselves. So we're committing a self-inflicted form of sociological genocide by not showing young black boys that black women are worthy of our love.
Okay. I noticed that whenever you speak, there's separation between you and maybe someone's lifestyle or someone's skin color. And that doesn't mean hate.
Right.
It's just that it's separation.
Right.
Do you feel like you have love in your messages?
I do, but I think only people with wisdom can understand it. I once had an elder come up to me, and the elder said, people hear you, and they think that they're hearing anger. It's actually passion. People hear you, and they think that they're hearing hate. It's actually love. See, the one thing about me, and I don't wear this on my sleeve, I help white people as well. There are white people who call me for their children, Chinese people who call me for their children. They'll never broadcast that, you understand? But I will help anyone as long as I don't take away from my own.
Okay, so here's the thing. I believe in love, love on purpose. I love everyone. I love the white people. I love the black people. I love the gays. I love the straights. I love the trans. Everybody. I have nothing to say bad about anyone. But I cannot separate myself from someone.
Okay.
Meaning, instead of me saying anything about white people, I could just say, hey, we need to love more. We need to love our women more. Any women, we just need to love.
Right. But from a political perspective, love is not a solution. In other words, if you say, I'm going to love the people who created AIDS, or I'm going to love the people that's perpetuating the mass incarceration in the mass incarceration industry, the school to prison pipeline. I'm going to love those who are in Africa dropping off diseases. Then your love does not become a solution because it does not stop the onslaught of the genocide. So at some point, you can continue the love. You never have to stop loving anyone, but you also have to recognize that truth and falsehood cannot occupy the same space and time. Love and hate cannot occupy the same space and time. So at some point, if I truly love everyone, that means I must be opposed to evil. And if you truly love everyone, which means you must be opposed to evil, you have to take political stances on certain issues because those things that are taking place are not creating the circumstances that allow for the love you want so badly to flourish for everyone. It must be freedom, justice, and equality for everyone or for no one. We must all have those opportunities or no one must have those opportunities. One of the biggest problems we have in the American social order for black folks is when we walked off that plantation with the passage of the 13th Amendment in December of 1865, there was no redistribution of the wealth for black people. In other words, we made America rich and got none of it. We have to fight against economic injustice. We have to fight against political injustice. I don't have to hate the person perpetuating the injustice, but I must hate the injustice. It's the energy that must die, not the person.
Do you feel like in order for you to believe some of the things that you believe, that you have to play the victim as well?
Not at all, because as a revolutionary Pan-African nationalist, which is my political philosophy, I don't engage victimhood. I can tell you right now that white America will never help black America get on an equal footing. Never, because equality is a sin under racism. In the very same breath, I'm going to tell you that we as a people have the ability to solve all our problems, whether the United States government gave us a hand or not. In other words, I can give you the reality of racism in America, and in the very next breath say, I know we can overcome it because it's been done before. We have ancestors who have overcame it before. We have examples of people who had to challenge the status quo and won it. So I don't believe in victim consciousness, not for one moment. Let's take miseducation. I know for a fact they're never going to fix the school district of Philadelphia. But guess what? Do they need to? Black Philadelphia spends $3 billion on Christmas gifts. With that type of money, we can build an independent school for every child in Philadelphia. I don't need the mayor and I don't need the superintendent. I need for black people to redirect their spending habits. If we really believe in God, why are we so comfortable having our children live in hell?
You know what's crazy is that you talk about spinning habits. Let's talk about habits real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a bad habit that you had, that you discovered, and that you had to deprogram yourself, right?
Overeating.
Okay, overeating. How did you discover it, and how did you work out of that habit? Because, you know, obviously your body is the unconscious mind, and you've been doing it for years and years and years and years. So now when your mind is telling your body no, you're in this war. How do you so how do you overcome that?
Okay. Well, I care for my mother now, okay, full time. And I love my mother to death. I'm her oldest son, second child. And I knew that I had to start eating healthier so that I can be around as long as my destiny has predetermined I should be, to make sure my mother can be around as long as her destiny has predetermined that she be. So it was my love for my mother that said, listen, your mom needs you. So you're going to have to take care of yourself so you can be there for her.
So basically,
as a result of that, I started changing my eating habits a little bit, because I don't ever want my health to be a reason why my mother doesn't live the best possible life she can.
So to make sure I understand, you have to, if you want to change a bad habit after you discover it, which is hard, by the way, right? Because you don't want to admit that something's wrong with you, or that you have, you know, a bad, you know, anything in life. After you discover it, you mean that you have to now visualize something bigger in order to get out of the bad habit.
Yes. And you have to make sure you don't allow your mind to convince you that overcoming that habit is going to take more energy, strength, and time than necessary. I do seminars for drug addicted populations, okay, chemically dependent. And you know what I tell them? And I would probably argue my success rate is probably greater than Alcoholics Anonymous and everyone else. I say 3 things y'all need to understand, and you'll stop the crack, the heroin, the methamphetamines, the opioids, the cigarettes, the alcohol, the whole 9. Number 1, okay, you must attach strong emotion to your desire to overcome this addiction. If you don't, you will never kick it. Do you want to know why? Because when you get high, do you know how good that makes you feel? When you are under the influence of the alcohol, do you know how good you feel? Only for a moment, because you come down crashing, but there's a very strong positive emotion attached to your addiction. That's why you use the substance, because it makes you feel better. If you don't attach a stronger emotion to eliminating that addiction, you'll never end it. That's number 1. Number 2, it don't take you 5 times to stop smoking. It don't take you 10 times to leave a bad relationship. It don't take you 20 times to stop overeating. It don't take you 6 times to stop using crack. Those other 5 times, the previous failures, you never made up your mind that you wanted to stop. The reason you stopped on the 6th attempt, because for the first time you made up your mind and committed. Your commitment didn't come until the 6th time. Those previous 5 times you were playing games with yourself. The reason you quit on the 6th attempt, there's nothing miraculous about the number 6, is because that's the time you made up your mind that it was done with. We play games with ourselves, and we like to convince ourselves that I don't want to do this no more. Yes, you do. Because if you did, you can stop right now. It only take a second to stop any addiction you got once you make up your mind to do so. And the third thing is you have to bring your willpower to war. Because without the willpower, you cannot win. And by will, I'm speaking of that deep, intense spiritual strength that is absolutely necessary to conquer any evil in your life. You master those 3 things, you could kick any addiction away in a day.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. How do you measure success?
Success for me, which I wouldn't be able to answer until I'm about to go back to my Lord and my ancestors, and that is, to what extent did Jermaine Shoemake make the world a better place than the one he was born into? So right now I'm trying to build a school. I'm also trying to build a community in Africa. There's a lot of things I want to do. Success for me is how much do you impact other people's well-being? It's not how many degrees I got. It's not how often you speak and this and that. By those standards, I'm already a success. That's not me. I wasn't born here to do that. I was not born here to just be some famous guy. I was born here to make other people's lives better. That's how I judge it. It got nothing to do with money. It ain't got nothing to do with education or none of that. How many people will have a better life because I lived? That's how I judge success.
Okay. So you said a lot of interesting things, man. And
I appreciate you for this interview, because this is the first time ever. You got to remember now.
Okay.
I'm the most requested black scholar in this country. There's no scholar that's asked to speak around the world as much as I am in this country. And you're the first person. And I've done interviews on 6 continents. The only continent I've been to is Australia. You're the first person to really do a serious spiritual interview. I've never been able to really articulate this side of my philosophy. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, man.
And I didn't think we would get that on Boom 103.9. I think you're going to ask me about that.
No, I don't do those. Nah,
that room.
No, I don't do that.
I appreciate you, brother.
I treat people the way that I want to be treated.
Yes,
I believe that, I'm a mirror,
Yes, sir.
and you are.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that you have to be careful with what you say because
Yes.
you hear yourself the loudest.
Yes.
Right? And, for me, man, where I got in my life, one day, I woke up. Oh, actually, what does woke mean? What does woke mean? Dr. Umar, what does woke mean?
The reason I'm shaking my head is because as probably the leader, one of the leaders of the Black consciousness movement, most people would say the main one who's serious in the way, I have an issue with the concept of wokeness because people are content with being woke. Let me give you an example. You come to me for therapy.
Okay.
You're addicted to cigarettes.
Okay.
You're self-referred. Nobody told you were addicted. You know yourself, I'm smoking too much. This is going to kill me. Let me go get some therapy. You come to me. I know I'm a cigarette addict. I need you to help me get through this, man, because I don't want to destroy my life. You're woke. You are woke to the reality that you have an addiction. But guess what? That's only the first step to rehabilitation. The problem with Black consciousness and the wokeism movement, they're content just to be aware that they understand racism. They're content just to be aware that they understand African history and culture. It's not enough. We can't stop because we're woke. What good is knowing the house is on fire if you ain't gonna put the fire out for us? Until I see us employing our own, until I see us providing jobs for our brothers and sisters who are coming out of the penitentiary, I don't care about woke. I care about success and progress, and we're not making none. The biggest difference between the Black conscious movement of today and the one of the 1960s is what? Dr. King didn't know everything we know today. Malcolm X didn't know everything we know today. Huey didn't know everything we know today. Medgar Evers didn't know everything. Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, they didn't know everything we knew today, but they did more than us. Look at what Dr. King did. Look at what Fannie Lou Hamer did. Ida B. Wells, Medgar Evers, Malcolm, look what they did. They had some knowledge, but they didn't have this knowledge, but they did more with less because they had wisdom. We have knowledge. Until we get the wisdom, the knowledge won't mean anything.
And you being misunderstood, right? Because I believe that, so when things happen to me, anything, I don't care what it is. If I get in a fight, if I get in an argument, if a bill's late, anything in the world that happens to me, I take on my own responsibility, right? I think it's very important that when something happens, you're not like, well, it's your fault.
Yes.
You did this, blase, blase. For me, if I get into an argument with my lady, I say, well, what did I do, right? What did I say? What type of emotion? How did it land there, even though I didn't intend it to land there?
Yes.
So in you being misunderstood, what part of that are you responsible for?
I'm responsible for the fact that as a Leo, as an Ogun archetype, that is my energy, as someone born on the anniversary of the Nat Turner War, the Haitian Revolution, the George Jackson War, I believe I am the sword. My job is not to come through and play the social worker. I am the vanguard. My job is to come through with the proverbial sword, right? Cutting off the head of evil, cutting off the head of untruth. So my job is to be the battering ram. I'm the first line. I'm the one you send in to knock the door down. And I mean that metaphorically.
Right.
The door of injustice, the door of lies, of deceit, of lack of knowledge. That is my job. I am an Ogun. I am not the diplomat. That is a Shango. Shango is a warrior too, but Shango is a diplomat warrior. Ogun don't do conversation. Ogun comes through with the machete. He asks the questions later. And that's a spiritual concept of destroying the lack of knowledge and bringing forth the truth by any means necessary. That's what I'm born to do. You understand? To tear it down, ask the questions later. That's my job. So I embrace the consequences of that, which is some people are going to misunderstand me. But when I look at it overall, I think that those who are sincerely interested in knowing what I stand for will learn it, because my evidence of my work speaks for itself. There's no black psychologist that has ever impacted black parents the way that I did in American history. None. No one has ever overturned and upset the ADHD system and the special ed system like I did. None.
So I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
The truth hurts.
Oh, the truth does hurt. And I want it to hurt because only if you are in pain will you search for a remedy to that pain. If you come to my lecture, I want to piss you off. People will come to me after the lecture and say, well, you know, them two walked out, or they were very upset with what you said about this or that. Good. I didn't bring you here to turn you into a Umar robot. I brought you here to make you think. And even if you don't come out agreeing with me, as long as you are thinking for yourself, not letting the newspaper, the magazine, or social network do it for you, I've succeeded. My job is to create an independent thinker, not a follower.
Do you think, you know, obviously, you know, I'm on radio, so I have to watch what I say all the time,
Absolutely.
right?
And I'll be on radio too, so I got.
And I know you came in here. Like,
I gotta watch what I say.
You got your pad, you got your pen.
Yeah,
you like, let me make sure.
Because I understand that that the airways will only tolerate a certain degree of revolutionary information.
Okay.
So if I come on here, if I'm on the Breakfast Club, I'm on Tom Joyner, I know that if I go too hard, it won't get played, which means people won't benefit from what I had. You understand? So when I'm sitting up there with you various personalities, I might want to give this answer, but if you give that answer, nobody will ever hear it. So I basically have 4 levels. I have a level that I operate on. If I'm in the hood in North Philly, and it ain't nothing but the brothers out of jail, I'm going in like you've never seen. But then when they invite me to go speak at the universities, I got to come a different way. Suit, tie, more academic. Now, if I go into the black church, that's another way. I'm not going to say anything about white Jesus because some people going to think I'm attacking.
But you did.
No, but stay with me. Well, I got a problem with white Jesus, but the reason why I may not discuss white Jesus in a black church is I don't want them to confuse my criticism of the imagery with the religious system, because I have no problem with Christianity. I got a problem with the images y'all using within your system, you see. And then I have the 4th level, which is like being on radio, where I have to be extremely shrewd and strategic about what I say, because I understand people have the power to shut down a message. And it is the message that they fear the most, because they can't control how many people hear it or what they're going to do with it after they hear it. Waking up minds is a big concern. I don't know if you saw the article that came out of Newsweek 2 days ago. Newsweek just leaked, some classified information that the United States government, particularly the Homeland Security, FBI, CIA, and National Security Agency, consider the so-called black identity extremists to be a greater threat to American internal security than Al-Qaeda or any of the terrorist cells. Do you know what that means? That means the United States government considers Dr. Umar Johnson to be a greater threat to the internal security of this country than any of the foreign so-called terrorist cells that the CIA created. You understand? So I got to be careful of my walk, because I understand I am a threat. 100 years ago, it was the Honorable Marcus Garvey, whose teachings I follow. 100 years later, it's me. So I got to be careful. The difference is, back then, maybe not Garvey's time, that's the 20s, but Dr. King's time, the 60s, Dr. King could operate a little bit because he had Malcolm to take some of that energy. Malcolm could operate a little bit because he had Medgar Evers to take some of that energy. Medgar Evers could operate a little bit because we had SNCC and CORE and all these different black organizations, Stokely Carmichael. But guess what? There's only a few serious black brothers in the conscious movement. I mean serious. A lot of them just want to sit on YouTube, make videos, make some YouTube dollars, get popular, that's it. They not about this. I'll die for this. You understand? This is my life. I've been into this since I was a 4th grader at Mead Elementary School, 18th and Oxford. I don't know nothing but black consciousness. I didn't come to this as a byproduct of being locked up. I didn't come to this as a byproduct of being kicked off my job by white folks. I've been the same person since I was in 3rd grade when I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. So this is very real for me. So when people play with my life's work, it bothers me because it's not a joke.
I think that empowering people to think on their own and to learn through inspiration would be the best way, in my opinion.
I totally agree with you. And I think that the number one most often used word to describe my message when people come up to me is that I'm very inspiring. You understand? Of course, you do have those few who take issue with what I said, but people say, you inspired me. I get emails on a daily basis through the grace of God, some of which is hard for me to believe. I've had people email me and say, you're the reason me and my wife didn't get divorced. We heard this one thing you did on black male-female relationship. You saved my marriage. I've had elders come up to me and say, you're the reason I sought out my mother, who I couldn't stand my whole life, and I listened to you, and you're the reason me and my mother talking now.
I have to jump in. The biggest problem today if we gave everybody $1 million right now, everybody's account, $1 million, we took everybody's debt away right now, no debt. The biggest problem tomorrow would be that people can't forgive and people don't want to forget. Well, that person shot my boy. Well, that person slept with this, and this happened, and this happened. Right? So it's a mental thing.
It is.
Right? And people are addicted to negative thoughts because the negative thoughts produce a negative chemical in their body, and their body gets addicted to it, no different from alcohol.
And they also love the negative thoughts because when somebody victimizes you, you can create an identity out of the victimization, which then absolves you of any responsibility or accountability for the role you played in the problem. Do you follow what I'm saying? So we love to be victims because while I'm a victim, I don't have to be held accountable for nothing I did. That's where the victim consciousness comes from. You don't have to be responsible while you're being a victim. Even when you look at black folks, right? Some of us have a victim consciousness. I don't. You know why we have a victim consciousness? Because as long as I'm a victim of white America, I don't have to be responsible for how I'm spending my money. I don't have to be responsible for the music I'm letting my children listen to. I don't have to be responsible for the way that I treat black women. I don't have to be responsible for the rap music I'm listening to that's calling my women bees and hoes. You see, the victim consciousness absolves you of responsibility. That's why we love it.
Responsibility to me, when I defined it, is being responsible for your abilities. And only you know what your abilities are. Only you. I think it's important to always look within. Always look within at all times. Right now, as we talk, I'm not here to listen to say that's wrong, that's right, da da da. I'm here to get my divine message from you because I know that I was supposed to get that today.
Versa.
Right.
Yes, sir.
2, I am here to understand, to listen, and to learn as much as I can. That's why I'm not talking a lot because you can't learn while you speak. You know. Speaking of learning, what have you learned today?
I have hope more than I've ever had for disc jockeys such as yourself because as someone who gets interviewed as much as I do, I don't have a lot of good things to say about the interviews that have been conducted on major platforms such as this. And there's exceptions to that.
Of course.
Breakfast Club is one. They do a very thorough interview. There's a few others. They do a very thorough interview. You follow? But normally when I come on a major, it's all sensationalism. You follow me? Where did you get your degree? Did you really buy the schools?
Everything that's external.
Everything that's external. You follow? So I'm like, wow, okay. Maybe I can take a few more of these because I get requests all the time and I'm like, nah, that's going to be drama. That's going to be, you know. So what I've learned is what I've already known, but a reinforcement of it. Be patient with your people because although you may not come across a whole lot who are enlightened, there are many of them who are. My thing is to be patient because with the Leo energy, the Ogun energy, and I have them both, patience is not a virtue for us. I've learned most of my patience in being a school psychologist, working with families, being a therapist. You have to be patient. But this is political. So this is teaching me to even be patient with folks in certain professions that I really haven't had a lot of patience with because, in my opinion, black media has done me a greater disservice than white media because they have sensationalized and taken out of context things that I've said. They've been the ones to go on crusades, miseducating the public about what I really am. And when you look at the history of black media, it started with a who? Pan-Africanist. John Brown Russwurm from Jamaica, who started Freedom's Journal newspaper with Samuel Cornish in New York in 1831. And what was the original purpose of black media? To educate and advocate. And I think black media needs to get back to doing that. And that's why I commend you, brother, because again, I didn't expect the quality of interview that we're having on a major platform.
It's On Air with Sir. We'll be back. Dr. Umar, I want to talk about the mind, mind over matter, right? So you know how like, for instance, you might buy a pair of sneakers and then like you see everybody and everybody got your sneakers now. You know how you like go buy a car, you felt like nobody had the car, then you know go out and you see the car everywhere, right? That's because of a system that's in our mind that detects things that we find important.
Yes.
That system also keeps us safe.
Yes.
And back in the day, we used to use that system for the lions and, all the danger.
Fight or flight.
Right. But now we use that system for what can happen, right? All the things that are not here, but just all the things that the mind just gets going. How do you feel like we can use that system to better ourselves? Because we know that it exists. Everybody's been in that situation. Oh, yeah, I just realized it. Yeah, that does happen. What is something that we can put our attention on? What is a way to use the mind to start going in the direction of the divine?
I'm going to take a step back, but stay on the question, because everything you hit on something that's related to why we do that, and that is our system of values. The reason I will buy the Air Jordans instead of paying for my child's daycare is because I value the way I look in public above and beyond my child's best interest or their education. You see, so we have to change people's values because your spending habits are a function of your values. If black people created a whole new different set of values where we valued each other's well-being above and beyond how any of us look individually, then that change of values would dictate a new set of economic behavior. Our values are tied up into money being spent to make us look better. And this goes back to slavery too, because when we first came out of slavery, we never were accepted as American. Black people know that unconsciously, even though we like to deny it publicly. What's the best way for me to experience America, even though I've been denied the rights of an American? And it is to buy as much junk that America creates and surround me and my family with it to give the impression that I am living the American dream when I'm not. That's why we got to have on the Jordans. That's why I got to have a Maybach. That's why I got to drive a Mercedes that I can hardly afford. Why? Because when people do not experience true freedom, they like to surround themselves with the symbols of it. Black people buy more Mercedes Benzes than white folk. Explain to me why a people who have 1/3 of the wealth, so you got two groups, one black, one white. The black group has 1/3 or less of the wealth of the white group, but they're buying twice as many Mercedes as the white group. How when you have less capital and less wealth? Because having that Mercedes makes me feel better. It makes me look better. It fills me with pride. That's why a young black man will kill another brother over a pair of Jordans. It ain't because of the Jordans. It's the way the Jordans make me feel, and it's the way the Jordans will make other people look at me. I get respect by adding value to myself vicariously with these expensive items.
And that's because we are not who we think we are, and we are not who, like for instance, I am not who I think I am, and I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am, right? So back to the question, how can we use that system in our head that will look for different things, right? To look for opportunities?
I don't know if we do that on an individual level. I think we do that on a systemic community level. I think so much of the change that must come, although it has an individual component, I think it needs to be done on a group level. In other words, a whole generation of black children need to be taught how to think differently. A whole generation of black children need to be taught how to work interdependently and collectively. A whole generation of black children need to be taught how to value material things less and value living people more. I don't think we get there individually. We can start there, but things have to be done systematically. That's where we're losing, because we don't do anything systematically. Sir might make the change. Dr. Umar might make the change. But how do we get this change to manifest on a community-wide level? That's where we're losing.
I feel like the way we get the change worldwide, globally, is through us. It starts with us.
It does, but it starts with us creating a system whereby we can socialize the next generation of black children to think a certain way. What is the number one function of a school? It's not to teach. The number one function of the school is to socialize. It's to teach the children how to think and act in unison for the best interests of the American social order. You follow? So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm simply saying that we have to use the individual power to create a collective system. Otherwise, we get nowhere. You have to change a generation. It only takes one generation. All the problems we've had for 400 years, you can change them in 20 years. If we made up our minds that the babies that are being born in Philadelphia right now will be raised a certain way, fed a certain way, taught to worship a certain way, to spend a certain way. We give them a whole new set of values. In 20 years, you would have a new Black Philadelphia. It only takes a generation. The problem is we don't raise the new babies any different
because of the way we think.
Because of the way we think.
Okay, so here's my thing. Forget all of the external things, because right now we realize that the problem is the way that we think. Okay, and people don't know that there's different ways of thinking. What is the first step to taking control of your thinking?
Okay, as I said earlier, with a child, we want to be careful of what goes into the mind. With the adult, it's no differently. We think because we're older, I can subject myself to that negative music and it not affect me. I can watch those negative films and it not affect me. I can sit around and hear negative conversation and it not affect me. Anything planted in the mind must and will bring forth. So the first thing we have to do is tap into the maturity and consciousness of knowing that even as adults, we have to guard our mind. So that means I have to stop watching this. I got to stop looking at this. I got to stop listening to this. Guard your mind.
Now, why? Because it will manifest.
Oh, it will manifest.
Okay. So if it will manifest, we also have to be careful of the words we choose when expressing ourselves.
Oh, we do.
Do you think your message, when you talk about the groups or the ideas that you don't agree with, change the way that, do you think that the things you say out of your mouth manifest the world that you're in? Because I feel like we are all on the same planet, but we're not in the same world. And to me, what I realized is that we have to stop allowing the external world to dictate how we feel internally.
Okay.
So for me, the first thing that I did was take over inside, saying, hey, no matter what I see, no matter what I hear, like no matter what, I cannot let it in. I have to analyze. I have to make sure I'm letting positive things in.
And I agree with that, but we can't negate the village, because as human beings, we are essentially a group-oriented people. And because we are essentially a group-oriented people, although we must do work on the individual self, we must keep a balance between self and other, particularly African people, because we are a we people. So yes, you must do that individual internal work, but then you also have to be a part of the village too. So we have to make sure we maintain that balance between self, I, and the village we. So that's not a disagreement. It's just an add-on.
I got you.
Got to make sure that that balance is there.
What is the most dangerous thing in the world to you?
Ignorance. Because I believe from ignorance comes every other evil.
Now,
ignorance can be fear. It could be a lack of knowledge.
A lack of knowledge.
Evil.
The thing that I say.
Greed is ignorance.
Right. The thing that I say.
Because you got to know that you don't need anything else to be happy.
Yes.
And the problem with us, we've been struggling so long that it takes us to get rich to realize being rich is not what I needed, and it's not going to solve my problems.
For me, the most dangerous thing, and I think this is just a piggyback to you, is not knowing when you don't know.
It is the wisest of persons to know that they don't know.
Right. So
and it
for
is
me,
also the wisest of persons to know that you don't want to know everything. You follow what I'm saying? I don't want to know how good it feels to get high on crack. I don't want to know that. You follow what I'm saying? I don't want to know how good it is to smoke weed all day long. I'm not going, because I recognize there's consequences that's going to come of me learning that, which could include me being addicted. You know what I mean? I don't want to know what it feels like to get knocked out in a 12-round fight. I don't want to know what it feels like to get shot. So then part of knowledge is knowing that some things are best left unknown. You understand? I don't want to know what the demonologist church, what they study and how they worship. That's knowledge I don't want.
Got it.
You see, part of knowledge is knowing you don't need to know everything. That's why God is the only all-knowing being.
Got it. To know when you don't know, for me, is the perfect way to start taking control of your thinking. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. What is the biggest demise of our youth right now?
It's greed, conspicuous consumption, materialism. And I would add with that, we live in a culture where getting attention is the most important thing for our youth. and it's dangerous. You know, the Facebook lives, the selfies, it's all about being seen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When I was growing up, video games were the great distractor. I never thought that anything would be invented that could challenge the video game for the amount of time that we wasted playing it, right? I intentionally stayed away from video games because I didn't want to become an addict, so I never got into video games. I said nothing will ever replace video games, but social network has. And so as a certified school psychologist, I'm bothered, obviously, because I work at a job where black boys are being referred every day for reading disabilities that they don't have because they're not practicing. It appears that they do have these reading problems and that they do need special ed, when the truth of the matter is those 10 hours he's spending on social network a day, those, at least 3 of those could have been spent reinforcing his academics, but they're not. Social network is the biggest time waster in American history.
Being distracted from what?
Being distracted from self-development as it relates to our youth, being distracted from developing social skills that we need, especially black folks, because we don't know how to get along, okay? Being distracted from practicing your academics so that you can be an elite student, so you can qualify for the scholarships and other opportunities that are out there. Also being distracted from your time that should be spent on spiritual development, the worship, the praying, the fasting, the study, being distracted from working on your life's work, finding out who you are, spending time with your family, charity to the community. I mean, there's so many things that we and young people should be engaged in, but I see too many people's lives have been reduced to going to work, having a cell phone, and getting on social network. I mean, literally, this social network, I'm almost certain that when the next DSM comes out, it's going to be listed as an addiction.
DSM? What is that?
Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That's the Bible where all the diagnoses are. So we're at DSM-5 now, which has been out for maybe 2 years. They put them out once every 10 years or so.
So basically the distraction is being distracted from being aligned.
Without question.
Okay.
And as black people, we can't afford to waste that much time on a distraction.
What is attention?
Attention, I'm going to say concentration, which is attention in its strictest form. Concentration is the ability to focus and attend to one thing to the exclusion of everything else until that thing has been completed. We lack concentration as a people. We are easily distracted. We spend the most time on social network. We spend the most time on the internet, and we spend the most time watching television. Black America. We are not focused.
When we come back, we got more. How do you feel about beating kids?
Well, I don't support beating.
Okay.
But
or, just tapping them on the butt a couple times.
No, I support corporal punishment. I absolutely do. I think there's a place for it. But I think too often child abuse takes place instead of corporal punishment. Here's Dr. Umar's rule for corporal punishment. When a child does something they're not supposed to do, 99% of the time, they should be given a punishment that does not include corporal punishment, physical spanking, right? If my daughter turned her homework in late, failed a test, said something disrespectful out of her mouth, there's a whole bunch of consequences that I can administer that don't require me to touch her at all, right?
Right.
But I believe that if your child commits an offense that is so egregious, it can affect their life or affect the life of someone that they love, then spanking is definitely within order. So if your son got caught in a stolen car and he crashed it, where he could have killed himself, killed the other joyriders, he could have been charged with grand theft auto, stealing an automobile, that was a serious offense. He's going to get an ass whipping. If you found out that your 7-year-old was starting a fire in the back of the house, just playing with fire, you're going to get an ass whipping, because fires kill. Fires could have burned up grandma up on the 3rd floor. Okay.
So there's no other way to.
I didn't say it's the only option.
Okay.
I'm saying that I totally support corporal punishment when the offenses are extreme.
What's a better way?
And there's a reason. Well, I don't know if there's a better way than to tap that behind when they do something egregious.
So
you see,
where's the
now,
thin line?
The crime must be equal to the offense. No, it's not a thin line for me, because if a child is being spanked every time they commit an offense, that's child abuse.
Okay.
You follow what I'm saying? If a child is being spanked every time they commit an offense, that's child abuse. I don't think your son is going to be joyriding every day. I don't think your daughter going to be playing with fire every day. I don't think your nephew going to be having unprotected sex every day. I'm not spanking you because you had unprotected sex. Sex is a natural energy of human beings. You're going to get a spanking because you had it unprotected. You could have gave that girl a baby. You could have contracted a sexually transmitted disease. When the offenses are egregious, so should the consequences be. And there's a reason why we do that. You do know that, right?
Okay, go ahead.
And the reason why we do that is because coming from a legacy of slavery, it was important for black parents to physically spank and punish their children because the offense you committed in this house, if you did it outside of this house in front of the sheriff, the Ku Klux Klan, or any of these white racists, if you would have spoke out of turn or didn't stop when they told you to stop, it might have cost you your life. So the reason we put hands on our children is so they can understand that there are serious, life-threatening consequences for not having discipline. And what is my definition of discipline? It's the ability to do what needs to be done when it has to be done, whether you like it or not. And the job of every black parent in this country is to teach our sons and daughters discipline, because if they do not have it, by the time they leave your house, this society will destroy them. That's why we spank. So you have to remember, there are physical consequences for black people in America because of racism, you see. And so the spanking is a preparation for something that can happen much worse if the same offense occurs outside of his home.
So I feel like a parent will only spank their child when they don't know what to do. That's the first thing.
I agree.
Or they
that
don't know what to say.
Okay,
don't know what to say.
You're speaking of the reality of dysfunctional parenting. In other words, a lot of children are spanked out of stress and anger by their parents. And one of my rules when I do my seminars on child discipline, you never punish a child under the influence of anger. Never. You wait. If you just came home and you found out your son did something, don't you give him a punishment now, physical or not physical. Don't do it. You know why? Because you're going to go too far, you see, and you may end up taking back the punishment you gave after you calm down to realize that that was too extreme. You never make important decisions, including punishment, under the influence of anger. You wait till you're calm. You give notice. You're going to get a consequence for coming in late. I don't know what it is right now. Part of the problem stems from the fact that we feel we have to give the punishment on the spot. You don't have to. You will get a punishment, but you're not going to get it tonight. I need time to think about it. Again, child abuse is a serious issue in our community too, because children are the only people we can beat up on who can't fight back. You understand? I don't support child abuse at all, but I do recognize that there is definitely a time to spank a child in order to prepare them for the consequences that can come from white supremacy, which can be a taking of your life. When that police officer says freeze, you freeze. You freeze, because he can take your life and the whole court system will support him in doing so. But we must make sure our children understand that we are punishing out of love. And guess what? You don't even have to explain that to them if you've already shown them the love. But I'm going to tell you where we mess up. You have a mother with a child. The father's not in the child's life, or he been incarcerated, or maybe she don't want the child. She don't want the father around no more because he didn't want her, whatever the case may be. The child gets to be 14, 15 years old. He's breaking the law, getting in trouble, smoking weed, selling drugs. Now she wants to call the father back. When that father calls me, you know what I tell him? You can't intervene. But doc, she calling me, my baby mom saying he off the hook. I said, guess what? How much do you love your son? I love him. Do you want a relationship with him in the future? Yes, I do. Well, guess what? The worst thing you can do is go and physically punish that boy. Why? Because he don't know if you love him yet. You ain't even been in his life. You can only punish when a child knows you love him. Any adult that physically spanks a child who has not established a relationship of love, that's automatically child abuse. Me and you agree on that. Do you understand? I take your son in the room and I spank him. Your son don't know me from a can of paint. That's child abuse. The only time a spanking is not child abuse is when that child knows for a fact that the person handing out the punishment loves me.
Nobody cares what you think until they know how much you care.
Thank you.
Yeah. I like that. Dr. Umar, it seems like what you're trying to get across to the people is that mental health starts with education.
Absolutely. And self-awareness.
Tell us about how the divine mixes into this and why you think that it's the way to go.
Okay. Well, when I was in the 3rd grade, I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. 4th and 5th grade, I was introduced to Black history at Meade Elementary School. 6th grade, I went on my first family reunion in Baltimore, where I learned I was related to the greatest Black leader in American history, the Honorable Frederick Douglass. The rest was history. I never left none of the three. I stuck with my desire to be a psychologist. I stuck with Black history and consciousness, and I stuck with what I consider a responsibility to finish the work of my great ancestor, Frederick Douglass. And what we're trying to do with the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy is build a school where Black boys can be taught the art of nation building and self-reliance, whether they go to college or not. Most schools in America are all about college prep, getting the child ready to go to college. Well, for me, that's not a success story. It's actually a failure story, because you have over 2 million African Americans with master's and doctorate degrees who cannot find work. So if your school only exists to get a kid in college, to me, that's a low expectation. My school doesn't exist to get them into college. My school exists for them to build communities. My school exists for them to become self-employed entrepreneurs. My school exists for them to go to any African community in the world, anywhere, Central, South America, Caribbean, and build up nation, build up schools, build up hospitals, build up banks, build up supermarkets, build up opportunities for other people. This is a nation building academy where we will teach agricultural and agronomical science, economic and financial science. We're going to teach science of the Black man and Black woman, African spiritual and astrological science, dietary and nutritional science, how to eat to live. That's the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. And we have 2 schools, Wilmington, Delaware, that we own. We bought them. We have the Frederick Douglass building, the Marcus Garvey building. They are owned. They are ours outright. But now we have to raise $1 million in order to restore those buildings and hopefully have them ready to open up next fall, August of 2020, for the first ever class of Garveyites, Pan-Africanists at the FDMG Academy. And anyone, if I may, who wants to donate to that cause can send in their donation payable to the FDMG Academy, P.O. Box 9634, Wilmington, Delaware, 19809. I repeat, FDMG Academy, P.O. Box 9634, Wilmington, Delaware, 19809. Or they could donate on the Cash app, cash.me/$FDMG School. I repeat, cash.me/$FDMG School. And if they want to reach out to me directly, they can do so, drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson.com, or by telephone, 2 numbers, 8444 Dr. Umar or 215-989-9858. And if anyone wants to work at the school, they can send their resume to fdmgresumes@gmail.com.
If you were to die tomorrow, if you could leave one piece, one quote, one paragraph with the world, with your son, with your unborn grandson, with whatever, you get one thing, one life lesson, your whole life wrapped into one, what would you say?
It would come from 2 of my greatest heroes. It wouldn't even be my words, it would be theirs, because I think they already said it. The one quote would come from the Honorable Marcus Garvey, who said, "Without confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. But with confidence, you have won, even before you have started." That will also be the second major quote at FDMG. The first major quote comes from Frederick Douglass, who said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and deprecate agitation are like men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want the rain but can't stand the thunder or the lightning. They want the ocean but they're scared of the awful roar of the waves." He said, "A man may not get all he pays for in this world, but you will pay for all that you get. And this must be paid for with blood or with blows or with both. But he who wants to be free must himself strike the first blow." He said, "For 20 years, I prayed on my knees to God for freedom. For 20 years, I prayed on my knees to God for freedom, but God gave me no freedom till I got up off my knees and prayed with my feet." That's what I would tell him.
What is the purpose of life for you?
The purpose of life is to fulfill one's God-given destiny on earth, to manifest God on earth. Let's go back to ancient Kemet, Egypt, right? People say, why did these Black people go into the middle of a desert and build the greatest civilization in history? But then when the astrologers studied the temples of Kemet, and we were there summer before last, they said, well, wait a minute. All these temples are laid out according to the stars. So every zodiac was represented on earth in the exact same alignment as it was. Why did they do that? Because our ancestors in ancient Kemet, who gave us the world's oldest and first religion, were trying to tell us that the purpose of life is to create heaven on earth. That's why we are here. As it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth. If there's justice in heaven, it must be justice on earth. If there's order in heaven, there must be order on earth. If there's righteousness in heaven, there must be righteousness on earth. We were sent down here to create our Father's house on this plane.
Thank you.
Thank you, black man. I enjoyed it.
I have a shirt for you today.
Yes, sir.
This is our Love on Purpose shirt.
Love on purpose.
Love on purpose. What does love on purpose mean to you?
Love on purpose means we must be conscious with deliberate intent with regard to showing other people that they mean as much to us as we mean to ourselves. Powerful. Thank you, my brother.
And we don't give out too many love on.
That don't look like an extra Smeedy.
Listen,
I think I'm gonna be all right.
That is the first Love on Purpose shirt ever given to someone else by me.
Oh, get out of here, brother. Thank you.
The very first one. That's the very first one. You ever have something happen to you that was so amazing that you couldn't figure out a way to say thank you? You couldn't figure out something to do to show your gratitude. You know that feeling?
Yeah.
What do you do when you have that feeling?
Ooh, that's a very tough question. I've had that experience so many times.
I have a solution, by the way. I got something new.
I need your
Love
solution.
on Purpose in the building.
I might could use your solution then.
I'm creating the Love on Purpose favor card. It's a pay it forward card because I realize in my experience, I've had this so many times. Let me tell you something. Years ago, a guy bumped into me on the street. He said, if you let me be your producer and help you with On Air with Sir, I have no experience. You don't even know I'm a stranger. I promise you, you will never, never regret it. And one day I will make it up to you. About 8 years later, that same guy called me and said, guess where I'm working at now? I said, where? He said, I work at Boom 103.9. And there's a new boss in town, and she doesn't know anybody. And I told her about you, and I got you a meeting. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Working through others.
Right? Right? So I'm creating a Love on Purpose currency, a pay it forward economy in a sense, right? With these cards. And you can only receive these cards when a person has no other way to show you how much they are grateful and how much they love you. And there's no other way. And they have to tell you the story on how they got the card so you can place meaning and value onto the card. And you can never give it to someone else until you have that feeling.
Okay.
And then you pass it forward and you pass it forward. I believe that love is a currency. And with love, you can get anything. And I believe the only people that need money are the people that don't have friends. So I am creating love money. And it don't cost nothing, but it costs you your love.
Powerful.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
I appreciate
brother.
you, man. I love you, man.
Yes,
Let's
appreciate
go.
You. Appreciate you.